All right, y'all, welcome to the Scott Horton Show. I'm the director of the Libertarian Institute, editorial director of antiwar.com, author of the book Fool's Errand, Time to End the War in Afghanistan, and the brand new Enough Already, Time to End the War on Terrorism. And I've recorded more than 5,500 interviews since 2003, almost all on foreign policy, and all available for you at scotthorton.org. You can sign up for the podcast feed there, and the full interview archive is also available at youtube.com/Scott Horton Show.
Hey guys, on the line, I got Tom Woods. Hi, Tom.
Hey, Scott.
I know you always wanted to be on my show, so I thought I'd have you.
I enjoy being on the Scott Horton Show. I make a financial contribution to the Scott Horton Show. I like to see what's going on around here.
That's true. I guess I owe you to come and give you a tour every once in a while. This is it. Welcome to it. Happy to talk to you again. Most people know you as being from the Mises Institute and writing 100 books, and but you are a director of the Libertarian Institute, which is very nice. I appreciate that. And
I had to do it. I always speak highly of the Libertarian Institute every opportunity I get.
Appreciate that. And also you host me ranting about things on your show regularly, including recently, which I appreciate a lot. So it's all good. But so I wanted to have you on to talk about just, I don't know, kind of
whatever the hell,
what's going on in the world, particularly the Democrats. You had a line when you were interviewing me the other day, you said something, the Democrats, and I just started laughing because I can just barely contain myself. And then I think the question ended up on Trump, or I ended up answering about Trump, whatever the hell. But the Democrats right now and what they're doing and what they're going through is so hilarious. Yeah. And I just wanted to shoot the shit with you about it and see what you think about what's going on now.
Well, you know, I'm listening to podcasts actually more now than ever, and because I listen to one or two, but because maybe I want to do other things in the car, like, brush up on a language or whatever. Like I don't want to get too, I get enough current events in my day job.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like I don't need any more of that. But to try to understand what's going on now, I am curious about everybody's opinion. And just the other day, now I don't even remember because I'm listening to so many, somebody said, I've been in this business a long time, and this is the first time where I've actually had to say, I have no idea what's happening. It seems like something is unfolding, but I don't know what the hell it is.
Yeah. Well, clearly there was an orchestrated move inside the Democratic Party against Biden. And I'm not sure if the New York Post is right that they set him up with that debate.
I don't know either.
But they were certainly ready to pounce. As soon as he showed his moment of weakness, they were ready to move to get rid of him. But of course, their best backup plan is Kamala Harris. They don't really... sorry, was that racist of me? Kamala Harris. But they're like the Libertarian Party. They just ain't got nobody on their bench. This is what they've got after throwing Biden overboard. It's like, shrug. What are we going to do now?
Yeah, I know. But the thing is, at first I thought, well, this will just be a terrible catastrophe for them. And it may well turn out to be one. But I feel like you can never count the Democrats out, and because they have every possible advantage. That for however many months we have left, the media will cover for how cringeworthy Kamala is, and they'll cover for everything else. And some of the things that Republicans are throwing at her, like her tenure as a prosecutor, or her this or that, how she got to where she is. I mean, a lot of people just don't care about that. Like, where do you stand on the things that matter to me?
Yeah.
They just don't care about the other stuff. So we'll have to see. I'm not convinced that Trump necessarily runs away with it. I thought he would. I started to think he would after he took that bullet. But I don't know. I don't know. We'll have to. Now, it could just be that Kamala's getting a boost right now because of the collective relief at Biden no longer having to be defended, because that was getting harder and harder to do. But I just don't know. And the interesting wild card in all this, and now I actually want to type it into the to a search engine, is Obama, isn't it? I think he's still. Oh no, he is about to endorse her.
Yeah, that's what I was just reading, that they were saying that he waited because he didn't want to seem like he was coronating her. He wanted to kind of let everybody else take the lead first or something like that. But
Yeah, that sounds like something they would say.
right.
I wonder what the real story there is, but it's interesting. I mean, I guess I thought there was a chance that somebody else would say, there's no way this can be the best person we're putting up. We got to be able to do better than this. And no one did.
The whole situation just cracks me up. I mean, I know I'm repeating myself from years ago. We've been talking about this the whole time. I mean, the guy was completely senile out of his head in the election of 2016. I mean, in 2020. See, I got what Biden's got too. But see, I've been saying that for years because that's a reference to how bananas he has been for so long. Remember where he started poking that worker in the chest and going, I'm going to take your AR-14 away, pal. You don't need a machine gun. And the guy's like, what are you talking about? You're completely crazy. But so, I've been saying, Tom, that, well, I mean, look, you don't have to know anything about politics, right? This is the kind of thing that's just, it's for everyone. This is for your auntie and mine and everybody's next door neighbor. You just take one look at Biden and he's too old for this. Like I have an uncle who's like mid-80s, who he could be the president all day.
Yeah,
but
right.
not Biden, though. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I'm sorry. He just doesn't have it.
There are different kinds of 80s.
Yeah, totally. Totally right.
There's Ron Paul, 88. That's right. There's Biden, 81 or whatever.
That's exactly right. That's a perfect comparison. You know what I mean? Ron, you can see Ron sometimes almost lose train of thought, and he's like, no, I got it. And then he's fine. You know what I mean? On the Liberty Report, he's better than me. I'll lose my train of thought worse than Ron Paul all the time.
But also, he's still informed about everything.
Oh, yeah.
He still knows who's doing what and who said what about whom, when, and
he's the best.
He's on top of it all.
Yeah, he is. All right, let's not start just talking about how much we love Ron Paul, because
Yeah,
we can just spend the whole rest of the show doing that. Lord knows we've done it before. And Lord knows we do love him. But yeah, but it's just been so obvious that like everybody's next door neighbor can tell that Biden is just not up to this. But then, so what are they going to do? And clearly they recognize that same dilemma. Yeah, but what are we going to do? We can't run her. So now, but what happened was it came down to, that was going to be like the litmus test, right? Was that debate. And he just blew it so bad in the debate. The body language was worse than the actual language even. And so then they panicked, but they still don't have anyone but her. Because you go down the list and it's a really short list. You got Gavin Newsom, who's like 6 feet tall and sort of has hair, but not exactly. He sort of got the Horton pattern baldness there, actually, if you look close. And of course, he ran California to the ground. Like, he's the worst. Everybody knows that you can't even go to Santa Monica without carrying a gun. It's nuts out there, man. And so they're gonna run him, or they got Gretchen Whitmer, who's like Nurse Ratched, who did the worst of all of the lockdowns and has resting bitch face, as they call it, as this horrible person with this fake kidnapping scheme and all of this stuff. Yeah. And then, but who else do they have? They start naming governors you've never heard of.
Never heard of, right.
To run against the most famous guy in the world. You know what I mean? And they just had no prayer. I don't know.
Yeah, like the governor of Kentucky. I mean, I like Kentucky as much as the next guy, but come on now, right? You need some star power, and that certainly ain't it. Seriously. Well, then they have the other problem of Biden actually still being the president. Right. He is still the president, so he's holding an office that everyone has just said he's unfit to run for. Okay, that's odd. Mm-hmm. But now that they've gotten what they wanted, and again, this they is a very mysterious, shape-shifting they, that even I don't fully know who the they is. But they got what they wanted, which was Biden's withdrawal. So now they've shifted back to the don't you dare criticize Biden, he's just fine. This just happened on CNN.
Right.
Whereas a guy was on a panel and he said, look, obviously Biden is not fit to serve if he's not fit to run for this very office. And they're all saying, what are you talking about? And it's like 2 weeks ago, never occurred.
Right. Yeah. In fact, the new line is just, well, we think that he may have trouble getting elected. That's all. We're not saying there's anything really wrong with him. No one's saying that, Tom. We're just saying that, well, he made kind of a bad impression in that one debate and had trouble overcoming it. Sometimes he has these verbal faux pas and slips and things, and so we just want a stronger candidate. That's all. Never mind that Yeah, no, the guy's got dementia. That's why he says the wrong thing all the time, is because he's out of his mind.
Well, they're definitely split on what the story is, because some of them were starting to say, "Oh yeah, we all know the very thing that we said you weren't allowed to know." You
Yeah.
know, so I think some of them recognize it, but their view is just, look, as long as we get what we want, I don't care if it's a potted plant in the White House. What difference does
Yeah.
it make? As long as I get what I want.
Right. Yeah. I
So-
mean, in other words, and this is the other thing about, like I was saying, everybody's auntie and next door neighbor knows that. Everybody's auntie and next door neighbor knows that. If they could have just given him a bump of Coke and he could have got through that debate, that they'd have been perfectly happy to run this demented old coot to sit there like a zombie in the chair for the next 4 years while they get away with God knows what, running the government under his nose. They'd have been perfectly happy to continue to lie to us and say that he's fine.
Yeah. No kidding. You know, and then the other day, or over the past couple of days, I've been reading examples of, and I guess this happens all over the place at this point, but this problem of ghost donors, where they take an elderly person who has made maybe one political contribution, and under that person's name, they make a whole bunch of other contributions, and they do this with a whole bunch of elderly people as a way of evading campaign finance laws, and it's just bizarre. It's bizarre. Like, and I don't know how they're getting away with it, but I just found an example of somebody who I'm supposed to believe that there's a 79-year-old living in a basically middling level apartment, who in 5 years donated to the Democrats 22,619 times. I don't believe that happened.
Yeah.
You know,
Seriously.
like, so there's so much corruption going on right in front of our faces, and it's almost like they don't try to hide it, because in part it's like it makes it even more of it gets them off more. You know, that we're doing it right in front of you, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it.
Well, and it is too, like, you know, I hate to do this because they're all such damn liars, but they also tell the truth while they're lying all the time about their motivations. And like, you can see how, especially with a guy like Joe Biden is the worst of this kind of thing, who believe in his own lies, that they convince themselves that they're heroes saving democracy from the forces of darkness and fascism. And that, you know, I had people tell me with a straight face, Donald Trump's going to abolish the FBI and the Department of Justice and all the different Homeland Security and all the national police and replace them with skinhead, white supremacist, you know, SS or SA gangs, white supremacist gangs to just go out. Like, what world are these people living in?
Yeah, I know.
But that's the world that they're living in. You know?
I want to start making money off these people. I want to say things like, all right, $1,000. $1,000 says that won't happen. And if it doesn't happen, and we'll find a neutral third party who will determine whether or not it happened.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to hear, well, I consider this particular bureaucrat to be a SS guy. Come on.
Well, they all are, sure. We all
I'll
agree
make a ton
about
of money.
that, but
yeah, right. But for the wrong reason.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole thing of it was, I mean, they just built up this whole mythology about Trump being that far outside of the lines when he never was, you know.
No. And the thing is, because as I keep saying, the checks kept being cashed, you know, sent out, endorsed with people's names on them, and that's what they care about.
Yep.
The departments are all still there. There was no clean sweep of any of the three-letter agencies or anything like that. Any of the things that we were told might happen or were promised will happen in the future, none of that happened, and I have my doubts that it'll happen even now. And the thing is, it makes you wonder, like, what the heck has to happen to this guy before he would do things like that? I mean, what has to happen to him before he said, you know, they've dragged him through the courts. He got shot in the head. I mean, you know, like, at some point you would think he would say, all right, that's it. I am burning it to the ground. I wasn't before. Before I was like between Romney and Vivek, but now I'm making Vivek look like Romney. You'd think he would get to that point, but he's actually not as excitable as you'd think he would be.
Yeah, man, I think he just, I don't want to sell the guy too short, but I think he really doesn't understand the constitutional system that well, really. Like he knows it from TV, but he doesn't really know. I mean, like, for example, during Russiagate, there were so many times where, it was so obvious, like even someone like Ray McGovern, who obviously leans left, but was very much a Russiagate critic because it was such a bunch of lies. He would say, look, the obvious thing to do here is just give a speech and royally decree at the top of your lungs that you're hereby declassifying everything. You can't call it obstruction. I don't care what you say, Department of Justice. Special prosecutors fired. Attorney General's fired. But I'm declassifying everything. And I'm turning everything over to the Washington Post and NPR News and the Wall Street Journal. You guys do your worst, but Russiagate is over. It's a bunch of crap, and you're going to find in there. You got nothing on Page. You got nothing on Flynn. You got nothing on Papa. You got nothing on none of this. And we're calling a halt, and we're going back to business here. We're not doing this. And what did he do? He just let them pummel him for 3 years. I mean, 2 years of his administration, really, beginning a year before that. But after he was sworn in, they kept it going for 2 more years, and he let them. And he really just bowed down to them and let the blob, as Ben Rhodes called it, Obama's guy called it, the foreign policy establishment, determine his policy. And in fact, he would even one-up them and, bomb Syria when the others might have been more reluctant to, or sell weapons to Ukraine that Obama was reluctant to. Obama's trying to sell them Humvees and night vision equipment. And Trump's like, give him the missiles. What are we doing? You know what I mean? Because he's got to prove what a Russian stooge he's not. That's just the kind of guy he is. So that's the kind of president I expect him to be again. Because, what are you going to do? It's not like he has a Rothbardian ideology to lean back on, or even a Jeffersonian one of any kind, really. You know what I mean? He just believes in himself a lot, I think.
Well, I think it's a case like, I forget which of the people I've talked to recently said this, but we were both saying that it's like whoever is the last person he talks to, that's where he's going to go.
Right.
So this is a very dangerous moment for somebody like that, because it's possible that he could have a it's not metaphysically inconceivable that he could have a semi-reasonable position on the Middle East. But if the only people talking to him are Netanyahu and Laura Loomer, then that's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. I mean, whereas with somebody like, I'm not really sure how much confidence I have in J.D. Vance, but at least I know he's capable of going through arguments and thinking.
Sure.
And he seems grounded in something. I don't have to worry that he reads one article and he, flies off the handle.
Yeah. I read a thing in, God help me, the New York Times, where it was a big kind of running discussion of all their columnists. And I guess it was basically Ross Douthat. Is that how you say it? Do you know?
Oh, yeah. Maybe, yeah.
So, and he's, I guess, reassuring Michelle Goldberg that, don't worry, this guy's a friend of mine, and he is not a Buchananite paleoconservative. He is a realist, and that means he wants to make friends with Russia so he can take it to China and be tough on Iran and this kind of thing. So, in other words, don't worry, he's not a Jeffersonian. He's a Jacksonian, and they like to fight enough that if you just point them in the right direction, they'll do your dirty work for them, and it'll be no different than if you had W. Bush in there, basically, So
yeah, so we just don't know. That's the thing. We just don't know till it happens.
By the way,
what it's going to look like.
I got a message today. And I don't know the details here because I've been doing interviews all day, but I got a message. Somebody said that the director of the FBI said that Trump wasn't shot. If that was like some ricochet, maybe he didn't elaborate whether it was, they're saying, a piece of the teleprompter. I know others had speculated it was like a flying piece of glass from the teleprompter. But apparently, I don't know, apparently the head of the FBI is saying that the bullet didn't even hit him. So, which is good. And I'm not saying that he was lying and faking it, because he may very well have thought it was the bullet, assuming that's even true. I did see where, some kind of liberal truther types were saying that nothing happened at all. It was a blood packet or this or that. And somebody had footage that they slowed down where you can see all of a sudden there's a hole in his ear. But I wouldn't say Because I really don't know nearly enough about bullets. Like, man, if you shoot someone through the top of the ear with a 5.56 round, is that what it's going to do? Is just leave a neat little hole? Maybe it would. I don't know. But it would also make sense that if it was a flying piece of something else that hit him there, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, obviously,
Same
there
difference.
wouldn't have been a flying piece of something else if there hadn't been a bullet striking
Sure.
something else. So,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
in a way, it's kind of like, the same thing. But of course, I want to have the details right.
Right.
And I don't think it's, the whole pearl clutching over questions like this. It's totally legitimate to ask questions about anything in 2024 America. You're going
Sure.
to tell me there are some things that are cast in stone
Right.
you can't even ask about. Like,
Yeah.
I don't care if people ask about that.
Yeah.
But
Which-
I'm not one of these. I'm not one of these. I wish he aimed better. Any of that stupid stuff. But
No, of course.
why not ask about it? Big deal.
Yeah, and look, so speaking of which, I mean, what about the question of whether they let this happen? And I don't know, Tom, and I've fallen off. I usually try to read the New York Post about stuff like this because they'll keep track of all the most sensational stuff I'm interested in. But I don't think I have seen where they named who was the commander on scene. They never say who was calling the shots there that day. They go, this happened and somebody said this. The Secret Service said that. But like, who is Commander Jenkins? And where was he? And was he the one telling the sniper, hold your fire or go ahead or do this or do that? I don't know if you saw where they're admitting now they were stationed in the 2-story building next to the building that the guy was on the roof of. And they were actually looking out those windows and took a picture of him on the roof out the window. And then instead of killing him or keeping track of him from the window, they walked away. And it was said supposedly to go and walk around and find him. But why not send one cop to go find him and the other one to look at him from the window? I don't know. Anyway, they just let that roof open. It just seems crazy that they did.
Yeah, there are so many weird things about this. And, there are some people who out there, I don't want to name names, who can be sensationalistic and they immediately grab the most suspicious thing before it's been verified. And then they wind up looking stupid when it turns out it was false. But in this case, even those people have been really good listing all the things that are curious about this. And I was writing in my newsletter the other day that there's something a little fishy about the fact that we get that interrogation of the head of the Secret Service, then boom, she resigns. And it's like, boy, all of a sudden we can be really bipartisan and rapid when we just want to pin something on somebody and move on. But I still have questions. Her resignation is not enough. I still have questions. And what I fear is that this will be just like every other damn thing, which is there are a million reasonable things that a normal person would want to ask, but it's been declared that anybody who wants to ask them is crazy because we've already answered it. It was this one kid, and that's the end.
Yeah.
But but why didn't the Secret Service do X, Y, or Z? Well, nobody knows, so we'll go on to the next thing. I mean, how many times does this have to happen in American history? Yeah,
seriously. And, I think there are a lot of times where people think that stuff is suspicious because it is the internet, and especially in the age of social media, everybody gets a say, no matter how dumb. So you can have things where people are suspicious of stuff that is not necessarily suspicious. Like, for example, just because a guy gets on a roof doesn't mean that you can just blow him away. We're still talking about an American citizen here, and there are like court decisions that are pretty loose, but still you can't just Randy Weaver rules of engagement, murder a guy or his wife or whoever who you've designated a target like they're an enemy when they're a suspect at worst, right? Unless they're presenting an immediate threat. So if they didn't see his rifle, they didn't know, they could see his head but not his gun or whatever. There could be a situation there where it's iffy and permission to fire denied. Let me know if there's a further development and then you can shoot, something like that. But I'm just making that up because they're not saying that. There's no real, explanation about what went on there, or the chain of command, or the the questions being asked, we can see where the second sniper team changes which side of the roof they're on to also face that same way. I don't know if you saw that the New York Times, was it the Times or the Post? I forget. Did a recreate. I think it was the Times. They did a recreation where they said the kid was basically pretty smart and put a tree between himself and the nearest sniper team. So they would not have been able to see him. But the second team would have, but they would have been further away. But at least they wouldn't have had a tree obscuring their line of sight there. But so that may be, a partial explanation for why they didn't just immediately snipe him. And I've seen people say, well, once he's on the roof, they should have just killed him. And which, after all, Tom, if he was, running away from a cop and he reached to pull up his pants, they would shoot him in the back and say, well, he reached for his waistband, which they do, every day, by 3:30. So it's reasonable somewhat to say, like, this guy's clearly posing a threat to a presidential candidate or something. Somebody should have done something. And it just seems, but you know what, too? Like, I just don't have faith in cops. So you can even see where a guy says to a cop, man, there he is. He's up there. You got to do something. And what does the cop do? He just moseys his fat ass on over there. And in fact, he goes around the building to the right. He goes the wrong way. And, to the other side of the building. And he's too close to the building to see up there. And he's walking at 1 mile an hour because he's a cop. You know what I mean? That's just how they are. He's not in a hurry to swoop into action like it's a movie and he knows what to do. He doesn't. And in fact, even, I'm not trying to apologize for these guys, but still, like, even the crowd, you got 10 people standing there going, oh my God, he's got a gun. But none of them swoop into action either. When they can see that the cops aren't doing anything, the one guy's wearing a Semper Fi shirt. I think he must be a Marine. You don't wear a Semper Fi shirt if you're not a Marine. But does he go, all right, follow me, boys, and go up there and try to do something himself either? No. I mean, not that he's armed, but still, like, you're talking about Donald Trump's life is in immediate danger. You're not going to do anything? And what do? They don't do anything. They diffuse responsibility onto the proper authorities, who I'm sure will take care of it, even though, obviously, the clock is ticking, right? It's going on right now. But nobody swoops into action. Nobody. Everybody stands around waiting for somebody else to do something.
Just the other day, I was, actually, it was this afternoon. I was over on the Guardian website, over in the UK.
God help you.
And I have 1,000,001 things that make me crazy about Trump, and they pick none of them to talk about.
Right.
So they're running a headline that says Trump monetizes assassination attempt by using photo as book cover. Well, first of all, if I had that photo taken of me, you better believe I would use that. I'd be out of my mind not to use that as a book cover.
Of course.
Are you an idiot? The most iconic photo of the year, and you wouldn't use it? Now, could you imagine if the situation were reversed and Biden used that in a book? They would praise him for making, lemonade out of lemons or something, like whatever it is. They'd figure something out. And it's so tiresome that I feel almost dumb pointing out the double standard, because it's not like they don't know there's a double standard. And they don't even view it as a double standard. The standard is we're going to screw people we hate and we're going to support people we like. So they're not really hypocrites.
People say to me, Scott, how do you get so much work done all the time? Coffee. It helps keep me from falling asleep. And it tastes really good because I get it from Moondo's Artisan Coffee at moondosartisancoffee.com. Moondo's is kind of the anti-Starbucks in that their coffee tastes real good. They have lots of great choices, representing all kinds of regions, blends, and flavors. I'm drinking the Ethiopian presently. Hey, wait, also, do you like saving money on good tasting coffee? Right now, you can get 10% off and help support this show if you just go to moondosartisancoffee.com/Horton. Find the link and the QR code in the margin at scotthorton.org. That's moondosartisancoffee.com/Horton. Hey guys, I had some wasps in my house, so I shot them to death with my trusty Bug Assault 3.0 model with the improved salt reservoir and bar safety. I don't have a deal with them, but the show does earn a kickback every time you get a Bug Assault or anything else you buy from Amazon.com by way of the link in the right-hand margin on the front page at scotthorton.org. So keep that in mind. And don't worry about the mess. Your wife will clean it up. Well, folks, sad to say, They lied us into war. All of them. World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Iraq War I, Serbia, Afghanistan, Iraq War II, Libya, Syria, Yemen. All of them. But now you can get the ebook, All the War Lies, by me for free. Just sign up for the email list at the bottom of the page at scotthorton.org or go to scotthorton.org/subscribe. Get All the War Lies by me for free. And then you'll never have to believe them again. I think there was even an article in the New York Times that was a whole article about how reasonable people or historians or some source fears that Trump will use this photo for propaganda. I was like, well, look, it's a real photo. You know what I mean? Hey, like they faked the thing. And it wasn't his guy that took it. It was a legit independent journalist, for what it's worth, who put his camera up and got a great pic. Dave's had a great joke about, like, you got the camera, you got the flag in frame there? Okay, great. Go ahead. You know what I mean? Like, it's just perfect. Which, by the way, he was in town and I was hanging out with him at the mothership. And within 2 hours of the hit, Dave is on stage with a 20-minute routine about the whole thing. And he's like, wow, Trump has a presence of mind to, like, stop, wait, and throw a black power fist and, like, all of this stuff. It's just great. It was so funny. He says Trump, he's just the luckiest guy in the world. He just Inspector Gadgets his way through life. Like, oh, I want to go into business. Here's some skyscrapers with your name all over them. Oh, I want to go on TV. Here's a 14-year series, you know, and $1 zillion. I think I'd like a little bit of trim. Here, have an endless supply of supermodels coming your way nonstop. I'd like to go into politics. You're the president now. Some guy just shot me. He hit you in the ear in the best place on your entire body to possibly get shot, your ear, where literally teenage girls put a hole in that same part of their ear to put jewelry through, you know, couldn't give a damn. Doesn't even hurt. It was so funny. The luckiest guy who ever lived.
That is good, man.
Yeah, it was good stuff, dude. Anyways, so... yeah, what a year. I like how you alluded to this. I saw you talk about this in a earlier interview I was watching that you did, too, about how, I'm just roughly paraphrasing here, that, like, boy, if there's a Skull and Bones conspiracy in charge, they've taken the month off here, right? We're like, it's just chaos up there. No one who knows who's running the empire. Nobody knows if it's the Clinton faction or the Obama faction or which faction of the Obama faction is up there doing what. People legitimately, not kooks, but just regular folks, legitimately suspect that the Secret Service left the former president and current front runner's ass hanging out where somebody could reach out and touch him in a place where anyone could tell you he should have been protected from anyone being on those roofs. In fact, I saw someone say, there's a water tower right there. How do you not have a sniper on the water tower who's got overwatch over every single roof there, who could have got the sniper no problem from up there? They didn't have a guy on the water tower. Somebody else could have been on the water tower, and then they'd have been shooting up at his ass. It seems kind of deliberate, maybe, or something. It's pretty crazy. It really is.
Well, at this point, it seems like anybody who's thinking has to be asking questions about not just that, but the whole weird Biden exit. I mean, who is really buying this story that Joe Biden is today's George Washington, who nobly relinquishes power for the good of his country because he's such a patriot? I mean, really, he was clinging to that office to the last possible second,
right?
With the whole world telling him to leave, and George Clooney writing an op-ed against him, and I mean, his campaign sent out a donation solicitation not 30 minutes before he made the announcement he's leaving. Yeah. He waited to the last. This is not a man who sat down and said, you know, upon further reflection, the best patriotic thing for me to do is
right.
That is whatever happened. It wasn't that.
I mean, and that's the thing is, like, on the last day, yeah, it did finally come down to Pelosi and Obama and Jeffrey Katzenberg, who we find out is some Hollywood mogul and major Democratic Party donor. And, Yeah, they just keep talking about it like this. The donors. Well, what happened was they had a call with the donors, and the donors said that they're not going to donate. And without the donor, and it's like, well, like, which donors are we talking about? You can't tell us the names of these people. How many people? Is it one big committee, or it's all different people spread throughout the country, and you had to make 10 different calls to reach them all? Or like, how does this work? We have the right to know. Like, what is this donors that you're talking about here? They make it sound like it's the name of a company or something, you know?
And what other decisions are they making? If they're making this one, what else are they involved with? I mean, why don't we just drop the pretense and make these people collectively the president?
Yeah, exactly. That was what Woodrow Wilson said, right? He's like, why don't we just take a committee of wise men like J.P. Morgan and John Rockefeller, let them decide. They clearly know what to do. Remember, it's in the WikiLeaks, thanks to Manning and Assange, that there was an executive vice president from Citigroup in Chicago who wrote an email to John Podesta saying, okay, here's who we'd like the cabinet to be. And then that's it. You're going to keep George Bush's man, Gates, at defense, Hillary for state, Geithner for treasury, and on down the list.
Didn't they do something similar in Ukraine?
Yeah, same deal.
Like, this is how we'd like it to look?
Right. And this is how they do it here. No shit. Isn't that funny? That's really a great parallel, isn't it? That Citigroup email is like a great kind of metaphor for the Newland phone call, right? That like, here's how we want the new cabinet to shake out.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And they've tried so pathetically to explain away that call.
Yeah.
But like, how?
Well, not well. I mean, what they said was that they were just referring to a deal being offered by Yanukovych to bring the opposition into the government. But they had already rejected that deal. And it's at least just as likely that they were talking about, no, after we're done holding out until we get everything we want, this is who we want to make up the new government. You could read it either way, but there's plenty of circumstantial evidence that they're not really referring to his offer, because specifically in the call, he offered, they're talking about, she's saying, I don't want Tannibach or Klitschko to be in the government. I want them to stay on the outside. But he hadn't offered either of them a post in the deal that they were talking about negotiating. Yanukovych hadn't. So it seemed more like they were just talking about who they want to be in the government after Yanukovych is gone and they set up a whole new regime. But either way, once he was gone, guess who became the prime minister? Arseniy Yatsenyuk, the same guy that she was saying, this is the one she does want to be in there. Yats is the guy that we want to be prime minister. And then there he was just a couple weeks later. So,
yeah. So there is that.
Yep, there is. Well, and there's also that great article by Ball, is her name. I believe it's Molly Ball in Time magazine about how, yeah, we did rig it against Trump in 2020, but it was just to save democracy, and it was wonderful and great. And it was, she describes like this shadowy, I guess, email list network of powerful, as she puts it, business leaders, NGOs, and Democrats and activists and people from all these, you know, liberal civil society groups across the country who work very hard to get the loosened rules for the mail-in ballots, to get, to coordinate all the social media censorship of pro-Trump voices, and to boost, pro-Biden people, and on and on. I should reread that article. It's been a little while, but it's clearly a nationwide concerted effort to do this.
Well, we have forsworn to turn this into a discussion of Ron Paul, but I think we
go ahead.
Because we can now imagine if they're this hysterical about Donald Trump, who's basically going to leave 95+% of the apparatus exactly the way he finds it. If he makes them this hysterical, what would they have done with Ron?
Yeah.
What would they have done to make sure that he couldn't win?
I mean, we saw where they basically unpersoned him and censored him and cheated him. And there's a whole book. I always forget the name of it, but there's a book that these guys wrote documenting how they absolutely ripped him off in Iowa and Nevada and a couple other places in 2012, where he at least very well could have been the nominee. I'm not sure if it's like a clear-cut case, but it's clear that they ripped him off in some states. And what would they have done if he was the kind of superstar that Donald Trump is, this unstoppable force like Donald Trump, as arrogant and as wealthy and as determined as Trump to get in there? Well, I mean, I don't know. Run his car off the road, something horrible.
It'd be hard to dig up dirt on him.
Character assassinate him.
I don't think he's been having affairs. I think that would have come out.
Nah,
You know what I mean?
of course not. I mean,
on a
Ron's a
personal level?
saint. The problem is, Ron. What the thing is with Ron was when he announced for president, there was one guy in every neighborhood who knew him. You know what I mean? So he was really starting from not really nowhere, but he was starting from like a good 10% or 15% name recognition or something. A lot of real dedicated supporters from those of us who already knew him. But Donald Trump is a mega star, right? I mean, when I knew for sure he was going to win was when I read that The Apprentice had been on for 14 seasons. And I'm like, oh, that's it. He's going to win. I don't watch primetime TV, but Americans do. 14 seasons? Are you kidding me? That it just makes him such and I've known who he was my whole life, right? Like I must have seen him on Robin Leach, Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous in like 1983 or something with the fake tits girlfriend and the Ferrari Testarossa and whatever. Like he always was this huge personality, the giant eyebrows and the weird hair and all the money and the 80s Reaganite yuppie arrogance. You know what I mean? Like he's this huge character. He was in Home Alone and all that kind of thing. You know what I mean? So for them to, I mean, I don't know. First of all, they can't challenge him, but it also makes it kind of hard to smear him. You want me to believe now that he's a Russian agent or something? Like Donald Trump? Like, Donald Trump. He might as well be your second cousin or something. Like, Donald Trump. You're telling me he, like, secretly works for foreign powers, some kind of thing like that? Like, Ron Paul just didn't have that level of familiarity among the population. So if he had been able, like, if the dedicated activists had been able to break him through to that level where, like, oh, he's sure to be the nominee, then they would have brought out every gun and they would have just smeared him and character assassinated him and called him a Chinese spy or whatever instead. They would have done whatever it would have taken to call him an Iranian agent, I guess, to get rid of him. But you're right. I mean, they would have had real reason to worry that he was just going to veto their spending bills, right? Like, no way. I'm just bringing this thing to a screeching halt. We're just not doing this. And by the way, you're fired and you're fired and you're fired. And Ron is a pretty gentle character. I don't think he would have brought massive upheaval to the government. He would have tried to get legislation passed and roll things back in the proper way. He's a constitutional guy first and foremost there when it comes to government. He's a liberty guy first and foremost, but when it comes to government, he's a George Washington guy. So, again, just like with Trump, they would have overly feared him. But yeah, I mean, they would have had a lot to lose. There'd have been a lot of corporate welfare, a lot of militarism, a lot of people very wealthy people on the dole who would have had a lot to lose ultimately under a Ron Paul government. So yeah, I'm sure that they would have done everything they could have to stop him. And I'm glad it didn't come to that ultimately. I remember always kind of thinking that I would have felt bad for him if he'd become the president. Poor old Ron up there, he's such a wonderful guy, just surrounded by such horrible people attacking him and lying to him and cheating and just being horrible all day for 4 or 8 years or some kind of thing, just be a terrible fate for such a wonderful guy to have to go through that,
At least he would have known how to get briefed by the right people.
Yeah.
But it would have been a nonstop effort to undermine him at every possible turn. His phone would have been tapped by whoever the hell we're talking about here. Would have been rough. But yeah, I didn't think that far ahead. I just thought right now, this unlikely candidate is surprising everybody and saying all kinds of not allowed things. And that makes me happy. We'll take it one day at a time.
Right. And it was huge. I mean, we'll never forget 08 especially, but 12 too. The Ron Paul revolution was not nothing. I mean, there was so many millions of people who got turned on to libertarianism that way. In fact, I know I already kept you too long, but let me ask you about this because I think it's real important, and I'll let you go after this. But we've been talking about this all day today, about this national conservatism and this sort of Trumpianism. It's kind of a fake Buchananism is what I take it as. But, you know, we love Pat because he's such a wonderful guy and, of course, such a great anti-war guy and a great historian and all that. Not that we ever really favored his international trade policies. And so these guys seem to have a touch of that. They have a lot of propaganda about nationalism, but they seem to really just be a bunch of Israel firster types at the end of the day, the national conservatives. But I just wonder, you know, and I know you lean a bit right, and we all have a lot of friends on the right. And of course, we're all agreed, right? I don't think anyone could argue. Certainly the commies agree with us, but everybody on the right and a lot of ex-liberals and everybody agrees the liberals are just the worst people in the world. They're certainly the worst people in our society. And yet at the end of the day, like the libertarianism that we're fighting for is like pure liberalism, right? Distilled, like real free markets are going to lead to a rapidly evolving society in a lot of ways too. You know what I mean? It's not altogether a conservative force to have a real free market. But so I just wonder, like, how badly discredited is the most basically defined liberalism by modern American liberals and their evil, corrupt crony capitalism, neoliberals, I guess. Their corrupt crony capitalism and their imperialism and their nonstop lying. I mean, this is the they that we've been talking about here, right? Is our current center-left liberal establishment. And I just wonder, like, what's left? We're still holding it down for real libertarianism, right? Like, we haven't given up on freedom is the answer. This new right-wing populist stuff, we might prefer it to Bidenism, but this ain't where it's at, is it, Tom?
Yeah, there are a lot of problems with it. And it's like Horton's law. Isn't your law something like a politician will generally keep all the bad promises he makes, but none of the good ones?
Yeah, and break all the good ones.
And I feel like the things they actually act on in right-wing populism, so-called, are all the bad things. And then the good things that I think we might get, we don't get. So, you know, like I would like somebody to have a populist message about the federal bureaucracy and how it's sucking resources away from you for the sake of turning around and rubbing your face in things you hate and all that. Like that would be a great message. You know, we have to shut these things down. But instead, the message we get is China. You know, we have to send some weapons to Taiwan, like that. How is that aimed at the average American? The average American has Taiwan has nothing to do with his concerns at all. He's living under a regime that has been weaponized against him. That is his immediate concern. And what's happening in Taiwan may be wonderful, may be tragic, but it is not even on his top 1,000 concerns. So unfortunately, yeah, though it's the bad things that wind up actually getting implemented.
Yeah. Well, you know, I was just reading this thing by James Carden today. I actually talked with him and Kelly Vlahos a bit about this. They've been writing about this for TAC and for, that's the American Conservative, folks, and for Quincy about this, that there's a guy named Yoram Hazony, who's the founder of something called the Edmund Burke Foundation. Are you familiar with that?
I am, because he's like the, I don't know, the intellectual head of this quote unquote national conservatism.
Oh, okay.
That I thought, by the way, I thought this national conservatism thing, when I first heard about it, was some kind of very self-consciously organized opposition to the neocons. And yeah, they have their differences with the neocons, but
well, this guy's a settler.
So on the Israel thing, which is kind of a big thing in American politics, they're indistinguishable.
Yeah, well, and that's just the core of the neoconservative doctrine is whatever Likud wants, whatever Benjamin Netanyahu wants. And so it totally makes sense, Tom, that even if it's not deliberate, maybe this guy has his pure, honest beliefs and he's just pursuing them or whatever, but it certainly makes sense in the scheme of things, right? That when W. Bush and Romneyism and John McCaineyanism is out of style, and there's this new right-wing populism and patriotism and nationalism, you just jump on that. Make sure that that stays a very pro-Wolfowitzian, pro-Likud type doctrine as well. Oh, you like nationalism? Well, the Likud is a nationalist party too. We're just like you. Israel first. And so America first stays Israel first. It doesn't matter if it's compassionate conservatism or whether it's Donald Trump and his son-in-law. Same damn thing at the end of the day, Tom, no matter who you vote for, you always get John McCain. Speaking of laws each other coined here, you know.
That one hasn't failed me yet.
Yeah, no.
I mean,
may it soon somehow.
yeah. Let's hope. Wasn't it interesting that Biden used it as a bragging point that the U.S. was not at war? I mean, of course, you know, we know that it depends on how you define war. I
he's
suppose,
like bombing Yemen right now. But anyway,
no, but I did think that was interesting that he felt like that was something to boast about, because it's almost like we've taken pride in not being at peace.
Yeah. I know. And of course, he is the leader of the world superpower backing two absolutely horrible proxy wars taking place right now. And they're the centerpieces of his entire administration. These are his greatest achievements, supposedly protecting Israel and Ukraine by backing them in these horrible wars. And so, and of course, yes, he still bombs Iraq and bombs Syria and bombs Yemen whenever he feels like it. But just providing an endless amount of weapons to Ukraine and Israel, that's got to count for something, you know?
Yeah.
It's just nuts. But you're right, though, and this is also true with Trump. And this may be the best thing about him. It's just that he says that he started no more wars, and he says that this is the height of valor. That that's what you're supposed to do, is not start a war. Not, look at me, I'm so tough, I started a war. You know what I mean? In fact, in one of these things the other day, I guess it was in an interview or something. Oh, it was in his big speech. It was in his acceptance speech of the nomination, I guess, where he's talking about what a peacenik he is. And then he goes, well, of course, we did defeat ISIS, but I inherited that war. I came into office and I had to finish that war, and we finished it good. But then we called it off. No more war after that. I'm so peaceful, which ain't exactly true either. He bombed Afghanistan for 4 years straight and helped the Saudis and UAE bomb Yemen for 4 years straight. But it truly says, he puts it, that he didn't start any new wars. And at least he did negotiate our way out of Afghanistan, even if he didn't get us out. But it is important that nobody wants to be W. Bush. Right? No one wants to say, I'm the toughest hawk in the whole place, and that's what's so great about me. They would rather at least be faux men of peace. So, I don't know.
Well, who knows what that means? But...
yeah, in a way, it's worse, right? It just means that they get to be dishonest about what they're doing. But maybe it means really that kind of sentiment is in fashion. They know that they must cling to it and tell that lie at least. And maybe that is something.
Yeah.
Anyway. All right. Well, man, it's been fun talking with you about all this crazy stuff. I can't wait to see what happens with Kamala Harris after just a few weeks of running. Oh, let me say this, because I thought it was so great. Yesterday's, I was watching this internet there, YouTube, and they go, here, watch Kamala Harris's 17-minute speech. It's her first big campaign speech. And I'm like, all right, bet. That sounds fair that I should watch that. And I just couldn't watch it. I scanned through just a couple of minutes of it in random places. She is just so horrible. I think I know everything I need to know about how bad she still is, right? Like, what's to learn? You know?
I definitely hear that.
Seriously, like her voice and just her fake smile and her unearned overconfidence and just all of it is just so off-putting. I can't. The New York Times says she's tied with Trump. But I don't think that's going to last. But I guess we'll see how it goes. Should be fun.
Well, if I may just close with a link.
Yeah.
I put, but I specialize in, I overturn things that are false. So when Ron was running in 2008, Slate would write some article or Salon would write some article, and I would make some video answering all their points.
Right.
And so then I kind of realized I kind of got a taste for it at that point. So then I've applied it to U.S. history, which is my field. So I'm giving away my 2 U.S. history courses. I used to have to pay for them, but You can get them at woodshistory.com. And it's
Awesome.
like, stuff that, no one's going to teach it to you. They're not going to tell you the truth now. They're not going to tell you the truth 100 years ago either.
Yeah, that's great.
Woodshistory.com is a website.
Okay, that's great. We'll make sure and put that in the show notes. And by the way, I was thinking of you the other day because I'm trying to figure out how to cut things out of my book. To cut it down to some kind of reasonable length. And I had to fess up and realize, and I went ahead and I cut out the entire nuclear war chapter out of the book. But so that's going to be my Tom Woodsian scheme to get people to sign up for my email list is they will get the ebook of the nuclear war excise chapter separate once the book comes out. So following your model there. And it may come down to more than just nuclear war sections getting cut out of this thing by the time I'm done, but I'm trying hard to keep it all, but we'll see.
I submitted an article. I was asked to contribute to a symposium over at the Law and Liberty blog, and they said we want it to be X number of words. They said 1,000 to 1,500 words will pay you X to do it. So, okay. But when I saw what I was responding to, I couldn't keep myself limited to that.
Oh, what was it?
It's a nullification symposium. So that sets me off. And I was not impressed with their article. So I wrote 2,300 words. And I said, look, I know, I said, can I write more than 1,500? And they said, we don't like the responses to be that long. So you could go to 2,000, but no more than that. And I said, well, I've written 2,300 and I'll take 300 out if you really want me to, but it's going to be like sacrificing one of my children. So I thought saying that would make me charming, and maybe they would just, they said, oh, ha, 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 well, good luck cutting it down. And we'll say, darn it.
Yeah, I know. Seriously. Tom Woods, I feel your pain. To quote James Bovard quoting Bill Clinton, I know what that's like, man.
Well, I was sitting there thinking, look, I'm telling Scott Horton to cut whole chapters here. Surely I can cut 300 words.
Well, I sent you that message a couple weeks ago. Like, hey, good news, Tom. I got it down to 1,200 pages. Like, oh, God. It's down to, well, if you exclude the URLs, because we're going to cut the URLs out, it's now down to 1,000. So I'm going to try real hard to just cut another 200 pages out and get it down to 8. And then I'll just insist that everyone read it anyway, because actually half of that's footnotes. It's really going to be only 400 pages. So,
oh, well, okay. Well, then you got to say that.
I have so many footnotes. I have 5,600 and something footnotes now. When I take the URLs out, I have my buddy run the algorithm thingamajig to take all the URLs out, and that saved 90 pages of just URLs from the footnotes.
Wow.
So
that's a big deal.
It's a lot. So that's how I'm going to convince people to read the gigantic book, is that half of it is just citations, so you can read the other half and be happy and it'll be okay. So working on it sometime soon.
Good luck.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, Tom, for being part of my institute and for all of the great work that you do and for coming on my show. It's been great.
My pleasure. Thanks, Scott.
Have a good one.
The Scott Horton Show, Anti-War Radio, can be heard on KPFK 90.7 FM in LA, APSradio.com, antiwar.com, scotthorton.org, and libertarianinstitute.org.